Have you ever caught yourself wondering why certain people seem to draw others in without really trying? They're not necessarily the most conventionally beautiful people in the room. They're not the loudest or the most polished, but something about them pulls people closer and holds them there. And if you're honest, you've probably met someone like that and walked away thinking, what is it about them exactly? Here's what the psychology of attraction actually shows. The qualities that make someone genuinely, lastingly attractive to other people have very little to do with physical appearance and a great deal to do with specific psychological traits that most people never consciously develop. And the more interesting part, the part that most content on this topic glosses over, is that people who carry these traits rarely recognize them in themselves. Attractiveness at this level tends to be invisible to the person who has it. So if you've ever felt uncertain about how you come across to others, or quietly wondered whether people actually enjoy being around you, this video might reframe something you've been misreading about yourself for a long time. Here are 8 psychological signs that you are genuinely more attractive than you probably realize. Sign 1. You're comfortable with silence. Think about the last time you were with someone and a silence opened up in the conversation. What happened in your body? Did you feel the urge to fill it? To say something? Anything? Just to break the tension? Most people do. Social silence triggers a low-level anxiety in the majority of people, and that anxiety produces a very specific kind of frantic, scattered energy that others pick up on immediately, even when they can't name it. People who are genuinely attractive, psychologically interpersonally, tend to have a different relationship with silence. They let it breathe. They don't perform ease. They actually feel it. And that stillness is extraordinarily compelling to other people because it communicates something that cannot be faked over time. That this person is comfortable with themselves. That they don't need the conversation to be doing something every second to feel okay. Research in social psychology consistently finds that people rate others who are comfortable with silence as more confident, more trustworthy, and more interesting than those who reflexively fill every pause. If that resonates with something you recognize in yourself, hit the like button, because this is the kind of thing that's genuinely rare, and most people who have it have never had it named for them. Sign 2. People tend to tell you things they don't tell others. Has it ever happened to you? Someone you don't know particularly well opens up to you in a way that surprises even them? They share something personal, something they don't usually say out loud, and then they catch themselves and say some version of, "I don't know why I'm telling you this." This is not random. It's not luck. It's a response to something specific you're doing, or more accurately, something specific you're not doing. People disclose to others they feel genuinely safe with, and not just people who seem nice, but people who give off a particular quality of attention, a kind of presence that communicates, "I'm not going to judge this, I'm not going to use this, and I'm not somewhere else in my head while you're talking." Psychologists call this quality psychological safety, and it is one of the most attractive things one person can offer another. Not attractive in a superficial sense, attractive in the deep enduring sense that keeps people coming back. When someone consistently makes others feel understood rather than evaluated, that person becomes genuinely magnetic. If people in your life tend to treat you as a confidant, if they find their way to you when things are difficult, that's not coincidence. That's a psychological trait you carry. Sign 3. You have a strong sense of your own values, and you don't apologize for them. There's a particular quality that shows up consistently in people who others find deeply attractive over time, and it's often mistaken for stubbornness or inflexibility when it's actually something else entirely: the quiet, undefensive knowledge of what you stand for. People who are psychologically attractive tend to have internalized their values rather than performing them. They don't announce their beliefs to signal virtue. They don't shift their position based on whoever they're trying to impress. And crucially, they're able to disagree with someone calmly, directly, without hostility, in a way that communicates respect rather than aggression. That combination of clarity is rare enough that when people encounter it, they feel it. They might not be able to articulate why this person feels different, but the difference registers. What most people don't realize is that consistency, being reliably, recognizably yourself across different contexts and different company, is one of the most psychologically compelling qualities a person can have. It removes uncertainty. It creates safety. And in a social world where most people are quietly managing how they come across at every moment, someone who seems to have already settled that question is extraordinarily compelling. Save this video, because what we're building toward in the final signs is where this really shifts, and you'll want to come back to this framework the next time you're second-guessing how you come across to someone. Sign 4. You're genuinely curious about other people. This one sounds simple. It is not simple. There is a meaningful difference between asking someone questions because you're supposed to show interest and actually wanting to know the answer. People feel that difference immediately, even if they can't explain how. Genuine curiosity, the kind where you're actually tracking what someone is saying, noticing the details, asking the follow-up that only makes sense if you were really listening, is one of the most compelling interpersonal qualities in existence. And it's become increasingly rare. Research consistently shows that people feel most positively toward others who make them feel genuinely interesting, not flattered, not complimented. Interesting, like the specific details of who they are actually matter to someone. If you are someone who finds people genuinely fascinating, who asks the question under the question, who remembers the small thing someone mentioned 3 months ago, you carry something that most people are quietly starving for without knowing it. That quality does more for how attractive you are to others than almost anything visible ever could. Sign 5. You don't need to win every conversation. Here's one that tends to surprise people when they encounter it on a list like this. But hear it out. The need to be right, to correct, to outperform, to make sure your knowledge or intelligence is registered, is one of the most common and most socially costly patterns in interpersonal behavior. And most people who carry it are not fully aware of how often it shows up or what it costs them. Psychologically attractive people have, somewhere along the way, made a different decision, almost not a passive one, not the kind where they simply don't have strong opinions, but a deliberate kind of ease with being wrong, being challenged, or being out-talked in a given moment. They can concede a point cleanly. They can say they don't know something without it threatening their sense of who they are. And they can let someone else have a moment of expertise or recognition without needing to reclaim the floor. That kind of security is striking to other people because it's uncommon. It signals something important, that this person's sense of self doesn't depend on constantly being validated by others. And people who don't need your approval in order to feel okay about themselves are, paradoxically, the people whose approval feels most worth having. And this is the thing that most content about attractiveness never gets near. Real attractiveness isn't performed. It's the byproduct of a particular kind of internal relationship with yourself. And that's exactly what this channel goes deeper into than almost anything else you'll find. If you want to keep going beyond the surface, subscribing is how you stay in that conversation. Sign 6. Your baseline mood is calm rather than reactive. Think about the people in your life who you feel most comfortable around. Not the most exciting, not the most entertaining. The ones where your own nervous system seems to settle a little just by being near them. The ones where conflict doesn't escalate, where difficult conversations don't spiral, where you can bring something real to the table without worrying it's going to land badly. That quality, emotional steadiness, is deeply, reliably attractive. Not because calm people are without depth or feeling, but because they create a specific kind of relational safety that reactive people simply cannot. When someone's emotional baseline is consistent and measured, Others feel they can be real around them. They don't have to manage the temperature of the interaction. They don't have to monitor how their honesty might land. And that freedom, to just be without constant management, is something people return to again and again. Research in attachment theory is clear on this. People are drawn to individuals who regulate their own emotional states well, because proximity to that regulation is itself calming. You don't have to be unemotional to carry this quality. You just have to have a relationship with your own emotions that is familiar enough that they don't run the show. If there's someone in your life who reads in this profile, who has this quality you've maybe never found the words for, send this to them, not as a compliment, but because people who carry these traits rarely know they do. And sometimes, the most useful thing is simply having someone name what they see. Sign 7. You're comfortable being misunderstood. This one sits underneath a lot of the others, and it's perhaps the hardest to develop deliberately. Most people carry a low-level, persistent concern about how they're coming across. Not always consciously, but it's there, quietly shaping what they say and don't say, what they share and what they keep back, how much of themselves they bring into a given room. People who are psychologically attractive at a deep level have, to a significant degree, made a kind of peace with the fact that not everyone is going to get them. They don't spend enormous amounts of energy managing their image or adjusting themselves to match what they think the room wants. They have a relatively stable internal sense of who they are, and that stability makes them less dependent on external validation to maintain it. This is not indifference to others. These are not people who don't care how they come across. The difference is that their sense of self doesn't collapse when someone misreads them or doesn't particularly warm to them. They can tolerate being misunderstood without it becoming a crisis. And that tolerance is, in a deeply ironic way, one of the things that makes other people most want to understand them. Amadak, sign 8. People tend to feel better about themselves after spending time with you. This last one is the quietest of all, and in some ways the most significant. It's not something you can manufacture or perform. It's the accumulated result of everything else on this list working together. But it's worth naming directly, because it's the clearest measure of genuine attractiveness that psychology has to offer. Think about how the people around you leave a conversation with you, not whether they were entertained, not whether they were impressed, but whether they feel, in some small but real way, better about themselves, more seen, more at ease, more like the version of themselves they actually want to be. People who create that experience consistently, without trying to, without even being fully aware of it, are among the most genuinely attractive people in any room they walk into. Not because they're doing something impressive, but because they are something rare, safe, present, steady, and genuinely interested in the person in front of them. That combination doesn't just draw people in, it keeps them there. The research that sits underneath everything we've covered today goes significantly deeper into why these qualities developed in the people who carry them, what the attachment patterns behind them look like, and what it takes to build them if they don't come naturally yet. That's where this channel goes next. And if today named something you've been feeling, but couldn't quite see clearly, that next step is worth taking. Yes, if you or someone you know has been quietly wondering whether they're actually connecting with people the way they hope they are, please know that these questions are worth taking seriously, and that understanding the psychology beneath them is where real change begins. Drop a comment below with the sign that hit closest to home for you, the one that described something you recognized in yourself but had never quite seen named like that before. Reading those answers changes how this lands for everyone else watching, and that conversation in the comments is genuinely worth being part of. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.